Hello everyone, and welcome to the City of Oshawa's Budget Telephone Open House. We are live tonight with Mayor Dan Carter, Councillor Giberson, Chair of Corporate and Finance Services Committee, and senior city staff. In addition, we already have many community members on the line who are listening in across the city. To ask a question live this evening, simply press 3 on your phone's keypad. Once again, press 3 to ask a live question at any time. Someone will take your name and place you in the question queue. My name is Eric and I'll be moderating the open house this evening. During this open house, we encourage you to ask questions and participate in our polling questions. The city has made it a priority to engage and connect with you and your fellow community members on the proposed 2023 city budget. This open house is a way for the city to share some information about the proposed budget, the budget process, and answer your budget-related questions. For this evening's open house, we are taking questions related to the City of Oshawa's areas of responsibility. This includes the city budget, comprised of both operating and capital budgets and municipal budget process, and city services and programs such as waste, green bin and yard waste collection, city roads including maintenance and snow clearing, parks and recreation, sidewalk maintenance, and more. Programs and services not covered in the city budget include regional services such as blue box collection, regional roads, police and ambulance services, social housing, transit, as well as provincial and federal services and programs. Our intention is to get as many questions from you on these topics as possible. You can ask a live question at any time by pressing 3 on your phone's keypad. Someone will take your name and place you in the question queue. Now, we're still having people join us. I want to welcome everyone to the City of Oshawa's Budget Telephone Open House. We are live tonight with Mayor Dan Carter, the Chair, and also the Chair of Corporate and Finance Services Committee, Councillor Giberson, and senior city staff. In addition, we are joined by Oshawa community members who are listening in from throughout the city. Once again, we want to remind everyone, if you have a live question you'd like to ask regarding to the 2023 city budget, please press 3 on your phone's keypad and someone will take your name and place you in the question queue. We also have a few polling questions that we'll be doing this evening. You'll have a chance to submit your responses live using your phone's keypad on those questions as they come up. Now, this time I'm going to introduce Mayor Dan Carter to welcome everyone tonight. Mayor Carter, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Eric. Good evening to you and good evening, everyone. I'm Dan Carter, the Mayor for the great City of Oshawa. On behalf of Council and the City of Oshawa and City staff, thank you for joining us for our Budget Town Hall meeting. Before we get started, we recognize that the City of Oshawa sits on treaty land that is steep in Indigenous history and is the present-day home of many First Nation, Métis, Inuit peoples. We acknowledge that we live, work on land covered under the Williams Treaty and the traditional territories of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation. We acknowledge this land out of respect for the many Indigenous nations who have cared for these lands and waters from the beginning of time and still do today. We extend our gratitude and appreciation for the opportunity to live, work on this territory. We are committed to understanding the truth of our shared history, confronting our past and our present, and build a better future together in true reconciliation. Tonight, it brings me great pleasure to introduce some of our senior leadership team and our directors that are with us this evening. Our Chair of Corporate and Financial Services is Councillor Derek Giberson, and you'll hear from Councillor Giberson momentarily. Our Chief Administration Officer is Tracy Adams. Good evening, Ms. Adams. Commissioner of Corporate and Financial Services and our City Treasurer, Stephanie Sinnock. Good evening. Commissioner of Community and Operational Services, Mr. Ron Diskey. Mr. Diskey, good evening. Commissioner of Economic Development Services, Mr. Warren Monroe. And I say good evening to Mr. Monroe and all of our directors that are joining us here at City Hall. Tonight, we're looking forward to answering your questions on the proposed 2023 city budget and budget process. But before we get to that, I'd like to introduce the Chair of Corporate Finance Services and my counterpart and colleague, Councillor Giberson. Councillor Giberson, good evening.
Good evening, and thank you, Mayor Carter. I'm the Chair of the Corporate and Finance Services Committee, as mentioned, and thank you, everyone, for joining tonight, a component of our annual budget process that helps inform Council about what's on Oshawa residents' minds as we move into our upcoming budget deliberations this month. For the format this evening, you're going to hear from the Commissioner of Corporate and Finance Services, Stephanie Sinnock, who will deliver a brief overview on the proposed 2023 city budget and the city budget process, Following the presentation, city staff will answer your questions on the proposed 2023 city budget. I'll now turn the open house over to Ms. Sinnott.
Thank you, Mayor Carter and Councillor Giberson, and hello, Oshawa. I am pleased to be here this evening with you to answer your questions on the city budget, but I will first provide you with a brief overview of the proposed 2023 city budget. Senior staff from the city are looking forward to an interactive evening listening to your input and responding to your questions on the 2023 budget. The city's budget represents the dollars that are required to operate the city and deliver programs and services to the community, such as snow plowing, waste collection, fire services, road and sidewalk maintenance, arts and culture programs, and the airport, just to name a few. The development of the 2023 budget was difficult due to the continued economic impact of significant inflationary pressures, which continue to pose challenges for the city. The city's long-term financial strategy and approach to budgets has been developed using 4 basic principles in order to balance short-term operating needs with long-term financial planning. Those principles are paying down debt, building reserves, investing in infrastructure, maintaining affordable tax increases. Following these principles has enabled the city to pay down approximately $45 million of debt over the last 5 years, build reserves, deliver a full capital program throughout the pandemic despite the economic uncertainties, and the average tax increases for the city portion of the tax bill is 1.79% over the last 5 years. An important component of developing a municipal budget is public engagement. An investigation of municipal budget public engagement practices has revealed that simulation-based tools are becoming increasingly popular as they allow respondents to provide insightful feedback while simultaneously learning about the roles and functions of government and experiencing the challenges associated with municipal budgeting. The city launched 2 new online engagement tools related to the 2023 budget. Tax Receipt is a knowledge-sharing tool that informs and educates residents as to what their tax dollars buy in a familiar format. The tool will be available year-round and updated to reflect the most recent city budget data. Balancing Act, the second new online tool, is a simulation-based tool that allows residents to share their budget priorities by attempting to balance the budget. The COVID-19 pandemic had a significant impact on the 2021 and 2022 budgets, which included lost revenues and increased costs, which were partially offset by cost containment mitigation measures. The COVID-19 pandemic continues to pose challenges for the city, although to a lesser extent than the previous 2 budgets. Most revenues are starting to return to pre-pandemic levels. The budget was prepared through a detailed review and analysis of all budget lines to reduce costs and maximize revenue in alignment with Council's guiding principle of financial stewardship. The 2023 budget provides for the same service levels as previous years. It addresses volume growth, responds to inflationary and contractual increases, and incorporates outcomes of continuous improvement initiatives. The 2023 budget was presented to Council on December 9th and reflects a 2.62% or $4.09 million increase over the 2022 approved budget. There is an increase in operating revenues of $3.62 million and increased operating expenses of $7.71 million. The city is seeing the impact of growth on the assessment roll, which is the primary factor driving the increased revenue in the budget. Taxation revenue from growth included in the budget is estimated at 2.06% for 2023. Recreation program revenues are anticipated to increase by $796,000 as it continues to rebound to pre-pandemic levels. Municipal parking revenue continues at a reduced level. It is expected that this trend will become the new norm for this revenue source. With people continuing to work from home, there are fewer cars requiring parking, particularly in the downtown. Municipal parking usage is expected to be lower than the 2022 budget by $527,000. Although the 2023 budget for the Tribute Community Center remains at the same estimate as 2022, there are a number of artists, entertainers, and family shows either holding dates or confirming events. The 2023 budget has been adjusted to reflect an increase to investment revenues as the city continues to maintain aggressive investment strategies based on fluctuating interest rates and diversification of instruments in order to maximize returns. The budget proposes $110 million to compensate the municipal workforce. The city has a regular full-time staff complement of 834 people. This budget is a net increase of $5.7 million over 2022, primarily due to the annualization of new positions added last year, as well as the settlement of collective agreements. These amounts are partially offset for known or expected vacancies. In 2022, the city made a final payment to retire a long-term debenture, which has resulted in a budget savings of approximately $2.3 million, partially offset by new internal debt payments coming online and a short-term financing plan related to the capital budget. Using a measured approach, the 2023 reserve contributions have been decreased to help mitigate the tax levy impact on the 2023 budget. As well, there are increases to other expense categories, including maintenance and repair, professional services, utilities, and fuel. These categories are experiencing pressures due to inflation and other cost escalations. The total budget requested for external agencies is $13.3 million. Capital investment is an important contributor to economic growth and service delivery capabilities of the city. A capital budget is prepared annually, which outlines all proposed capital projects for the upcoming year, plus a forecast of capital projects for the following 9 years. Not only is a 10-year budget a best practice, the information is also required to satisfy the requirements of asset management legislation. The 2023 capital submission totals $38.925 million and includes major projects related to roads, vehicles, parks, buildings and equipment, and other city assets. The 2023 capital budget also supports the environment through green infrastructure investment, including projects for EV chargers and lighting upgrades. Financing for the city's capital plan is derived through a variety of sources, including reserve and reserve funds, development charges, the Canada Community Building Fund, the issuance of debt, or other sources such as cost-sharing arrangements for the delivery of specific projects. The 2023 capital funding has been proposed using a combination of these sources. The capital binder also includes an updated capital forecast for the years 2024 through 2032 and outlines infrastructure project requirements of $817.8 million. In October 2021, the asset management plan covering the city's core infrastructure assets was approved by Council, meeting the requirements of Phase 1 of the provincial regulations. This plan includes the state of the infrastructure of core assets, the current service levels, and the cost to maintain the current service levels. A key finding from Phase 1 of the asset management plan is the estimate of the annual funding gap in the amount of $25 million a year for the city's total asset base. Work for the next iteration of the asset management plan is currently underway and will include a detailed analysis of all the city's non-core assets. The 2.62% tax levy increase has been accomplished through an intensive review of all account lines and the implementation of strategies to reduce the negative impacts of the current economic climate to the greatest extent possible. A 2.62% tax levy increase will result in approximately $53.41 on the city portion of property taxes for a residential property assessed at $356,000. Okay, Eric, let's get started.
Well, we're going to get into the Q&A portion of the event now, and I want to remind everyone that if you'd like to ask a live question, we want to hear from you. Press 3 on your phone's keypad at any time during the open house this evening. Someone will take your name and place you in the question queue. You'll have a chance to ask that live question. Again, press 3 on your phone's keypad if you'd like to ask a live question. For this evening's open house, we're taking questions related to the City of Oshawa's areas of responsibility, including the city budget, comprised of both operating and capital budgets and municipal budget processes, as well as city services and programs such as waste, green bin and yard waste collection, city roads, maintenance and snow clearing, parks and recreation, sidewalk maintenance, and more. Just before we get to our first live question, we're going to do a polling question. So using your touch-tone phone, you can indicate your response on the following question, and we want to hear from you. We want to know, do you feel that you understand how your tax dollars are used within the city budget? If your answer is yes, press 1. If your answer is no, press 2. So again, do you feel that you understand how your tax dollars are used within the city budget? If your answer is yes, press 1, and if your answer is no, press 2. Also, a quick reminder, transit is a regional question, so we won't be covering questions related to transit. We are looking for questions related to the city budget on the open house this evening. Up next, we have our first live question. Elizabeth, you're joining us live, and you have a question, I believe, about street maintenance. Please go ahead, Elizabeth.
Yes, I was just wondering, last year it didn't seem like the center of Oshawa had done anything about their roads are terrible, the manholes are dipping, that the tires just completely flattened out just about. I was wondering if the budget has allocated money to fix that this year, the center core.
Thank you for your question, Elizabeth. I'm going to turn the microphone over to our Commissioner, Ron Diskey.
Good afternoon or good evening, Elizabeth. Just for clarity, are you speaking regarding a specific street or all streets?
Well, pretty well all streets in the center core, Adelaide, Ritson, yeah. And they're just, I find they're terrible, and I feel that the city is going back to the days where the taxes weren't increased and the city was going down the tubes, basically.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm going to ask Mike Saulnier, who's the Director of Operations, to answer your question. Thank you.
Good evening, Elizabeth. Essentially, we have patrol staff that monitors all the conditions of every road that we have at the city. Anything that is abnormal that has a lift, or whether it's a manhole cover or anything of that nature, is addressed through patrol. So we do spend money on maintenance on all the roads. There are roads that you named that are regional roads that are not in our jurisdiction, and we'd have no ability to address those. We would flag them if we did come across it to the region, but we do provide maintenance on those roads.
Elizabeth, thank you very much for that question. Now, before we get to our next question, I was wondering if, Stephanie, you could take a moment to outline some of the challenges the city is facing this year.
Absolutely, Eric. Major world events are significantly impacting inflation and increasing commodity prices, which is occurring in virtually all market sectors. The COVID-19 pandemic recovery, the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, global supply chain issues, and other influences will see these economic trends continue. Not unlike other municipalities, these issues are resulting in several requests for tender and requests for proposals coming in over budget. In addition to inflation and increased commodity prices, key drivers affecting pricing received by the city include global supply chain issues, including the shortages of equipment and materials, logistical disruptions resulting in longer lead times, increased manufacturing costs, primarily driven by the cost of raw material and the shortage of skilled laborers, high demand for equipment, rising fuel and energy prices. Municipalities are also facing legislative and regulatory funding risks, in particular Bill 23, the More Homes Built Faster Act, which will have significant financial consequences to the city. I think we're ready for another question, Eric.
We have some more live questions ready to go. A quick reminder to everyone joining us, we want to hear from you. If you have a question related to the city budget or city services and programs, please press 3 on your phone's keypad. Someone will take your name and place you in the question queue. Up next, Mark is joining us, and Mark has a question about funding for public washrooms. Mark, welcome. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. And, Lakeview Park is in outstanding shape. People have done a really good job, especially during the pandemic, of keeping it clean, and beach looks great down there. The issue really is that there is not year-round washrooms down there. There are porta potties down there, and we've sent pictures in about how disgusting they can be, and I just wonder whether there's been money set aside in the budget to have at least one year-round washroom at Lakeview Park.
Thank you for your question, Mark. I'm going to pass your question over to Commissioner Diskey.
Thank you, Mark, for the question. The answer is at this time no money has been set aside for a permanent washroom at Lakeview Park. You may or may not know that our washrooms down there are not winterized, so that's one of the reasons why we can't operate the washrooms at that location.
Mark, thank you very much for your question. We'll go to our next live question. Another quick reminder, press 3 on your phone's keypad if you'd like to ask a live question on the open house this evening. We have Annette who's joining us live now. Annette, welcome. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I listened, and part of the summary that was indicated mentioned a 2.62% tax levy increase, which would amount to $53.41 of the city's portion of assessment taxes. Is that what was being referred to as last year's tax levy increase, or is this what the council is contemplating for this 2023 year?
Thank you, Annette, for your question. The 2.62% or $53.41 referred to in the presentation is what is in front of council right now for consideration for the 2023 budget.
Annette, thank you very much for that question. Now we're going to go to another live question. Again, just a reminder for everyone that we are taking your questions this evening. You can press 3 on your phone's keypad at any time, and someone will take your name and place you in the question queue. For this evening's open house, we're taking questions related to the City of Oshawa's areas of responsibility, including the city budget, comprised of both operating and capital budgets and municipal budget processes, city services and programs such as waste, green bin, and yard waste collection, city roads, including maintenance and snow clearing, parks and recreation, sidewalk maintenance, and more. Programs and services not covered in the city budget include regional services such as blue box collection, regional roads, police and ambulance services, social housing, transit, as well as provincial and federal services and programs. Up next, we have a question from Amir, who has a question regarding Conlin roads. Amir, welcome.
Thank you. My question is regarding the capital budget. Is there any provisioning to expand Conlin Road in the upcoming next 2 years? Because there is a growing concern that since there are some new townhome communities, it may not be able to facilitate the traffic, particularly between Harmony, Conlin, and Simcoe and Conlin. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Amir. I'm going to direct it to Anthony Ambra, our Director of Engineering.
Good evening, Amir. Thank you for your question. We are looking at work along Conlin Road right across from Ritson through to Town Line. The section that you described from Harmony to Grandview is currently being designed, including a roundabout at Grandview, and is being considered for construction within the short term.
Amir, thank you for that question. Now, we have our next live question ready to go. Quick reminder, press 3 on your phone's keypad if you'd like to ask a question regarding one of the topics we're discussing this evening, the city budget and city services and programs. We have our next live question coming up from Lucille. Lucille's question is regarding sidewalk maintenance. Lucille, welcome.
Hello. I just wanted to inquire about the reason that you fill holes on the sidewalk when they're dug up for one reason or another. Or it might not be you that does it. It might be the contractor. But they fill it with ordinary paving material, like road paving material, and it doesn't last any better, in fact, less on the sidewalk because it doesn't have a kit, properly installed. And I'd like to know what the savings is on that, or if it's just delaying costs.
Thank you for your question, Lucille. I'm going to direct your question to Director of Operations, Mike Saunier.
Good evening, Lucille. Essentially, we have 696 kilometers of sidewalks in the city, and the asphalt that you're referring to is called a feathering, and it's to bridge a gap because we spend about $400,000 in sidewalk repairs in the city. We could spend more, but essentially the asphalt gets you to another year, and then we know that it's going to deteriorate and it's not going to last, and eventually we'll have to get to that sidewalk and fix it.
Lucille, thank you for your question. Now, just before we get to our next question, Stephanie, could you tell listeners what is the most important thing that the public should understand about Bill 23 and how it may impact Oshawa taxpayers?
Thank you, Eric. In November 2022, Bill 23, More Homes Built Faster Act, was passed by the provincial legislature and received royal assent with the objective of supporting the province's plan to address the housing crisis by targeting the creation of 1.5 million homes over the next 10 years. Bill 23 includes numerous changes to the Planning Act, Development Charges Act, and the Ontario Heritage Act. Municipalities are able to set and collect development charges in order to cover the cost of providing the infrastructure necessary to support new growth in communities and ensure that taxpayers are not subsidizing that growth. However, many of the proposed amendments to the Development Charge Act will result in taxpayers paying for growth rather than growth paying for growth. Taxpayers will be subsidizing new development in the city. This can also force municipalities to reduce service levels, potentially affecting health and safety of the residents. A conservative high-level estimate calculated the approximate impact to the city over a 5-year period at $74.3 million. There are no provisions in the proposed 2023 budget to cover the potential impacts of Bill 23. There will be significant implications to future budgets.
Stephanie, thank you for that information. We're going to go to our next polling question. So using your touchtone phone, you can indicate your response on this polling question, and we want to hear from you. We want to know what option would you prefer the most to balance the budget? What option would you prefer the most to balance the budget? If your answer is increase property taxes to increase services, press 1. If your answer is increase property taxes to maintain services, press 2. If your answer is increase user fees to maintain services, press 3. If your answer is a combination of an increase in property taxes and user fees to maintain services, press 4. If your answer is a combination of a small increase in taxes and user fees and decrease of services, press 5. If your answer is to maintain current taxes and decrease services, press 6. So again, what option would you prefer the most to balance the budget? If your answer is increase property taxes to increase services, press 1. If your answer is increase property taxes to maintain services, press 2. If your answer is increase user fees to maintain services, press 3. If your answer is a combination of increase in property taxes and user fees to maintain services, press 4. If your answer is a combination of a small increase in taxes and user fees and decrease of services, press 5. If your answer is to maintain current taxes and decrease services, press 6. We have our next live question. Roy is joining us live now. Roy has a question about bike lanes. Welcome. Roy, you're joining us live. Hello, Roy. You're joining us live on the line. Please go ahead with your question.
Oh, my question is, with the cycling infrastructure in Oshawa, is there money in the budget to improve the cycling infrastructure again this year? And my second question is, if there is money to improve cycling in Oshawa, are you going to leave the money in, or will it be extracted out as a cost-saving measure down the road? Thank you.
Thank you, Roy, for your question. I'm going to direct it to Anthony Ambra, our Director of Engineering.
Good evening, Roy. Thank you for your question. There is money in the budget this year for multi-use paths along Farewell, which can be used as a cycling facility. As well, we do carry money in the budget for pavement markings on a regular basis, and we do look for opportunities as part of our active transportation master plan to fill in bike facilities as required.
Roy, thank you very much for that question. Up next, we have a question that was submitted via Facebook from Mona. Stephanie, this is a question for you. Mona's wondering if the proposed 2023 city budget has any incentives for seniors or lower property taxes.
Yes, the City of Oshawa does offer property tax relief for low-income seniors. The City of Oshawa website contains the details of the rebate program, as well as the eligibility criteria and application form. The program is currently open for applications.
Stephanie, thank you. Up next, we have a live question from Tammy. Tammy's question is related to wildlife. Tammy, welcome. Please go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, actually, she did answer the question partially about the bill, the new bill happening, but I did have still a question about that as well. Can I ask two questions?
Yeah, Tammy, yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because she had elaborated a bit more in terms of that our taxes are going to be affected by this new bill, and I just wonder if the city has any recourse on this, especially since it will be affecting our taxes.
Thank you, Tammy. The city really does not have any recourse on the new bill. Municipalities all across the province have been lobbying hard against the government to try and repeal or at least hold on the legislation until they can have a fulsome understanding of how it will be impacting municipalities and, in particular, the needs of the taxpayer.
Tammy, thank you for that question. Up next, we're going to go to another live question. Just a quick reminder to everyone joining us, though, we do want to hear your questions. You can press 3 on your phone's keypad at any time during the open house, and someone will take your name and place you in the question queue. For this evening's opening house, we're taking questions related to the City of Oshawa's areas of responsibility, including the city budget, city services and programs such as waste, green bin, and yard waste collection, city roads, including maintenance and snow clearing, parks and recreation, sidewalk maintenance, and more. Up next, we have Arthur, who has a question related to Harmony Valley Park. Arthur, welcome. Please go ahead.
Yes, Harmony Valley Park is one of the Oshawa parks, and certainly Oshawa parks is one of the reasons why I live in Oshawa, really. Oshawa is a great municipality because of our great parks. But I am concerned that the council is not keeping track of the usage of the Harmony Valley Dog Park. I'm not talking about dogs, I'm talking about people. Because rain or snow, heat, cold, doesn't matter. The people are there every day. Many of the nicer days, there's no parking available. I'm lucky I can walk to the park, but it gets very crowded. The trails are very crowded, and I'm just wondering if we can ensure that the usage is counted and more money is spent on the park to maintain the trails and to expand the park if possible. There's lots of areas around the park which are city-owned or could be city-owned, which are not part of the park currently. And extensions to the trails could be made because it's a great place, but it's just not enough of the park's budget is going into the park. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Arthur. I'm going to turn your question over to Director of Operations, Mike Saunier.
Good evening, Arthur. Essentially, we monitor the park usage, and I'm very happy to hear that that park is well used. You're right about the dog park there. We're also opening a second dog park at Cordova, so that should reduce the volume as well. We're always trying to enhance and make sure that our trail networks meets the needs for all the residents, and there's only so much money, obviously, to spread around to make sure that trails all meet, intertwine there. But we certainly take into consideration, and we do notify and advise council members as to what type of usage goes on in these parks. Thank you.
Arthur, thank you very much for that question. Up next, we have a live question from Phil, who has a question regarding the marina. Phil, welcome. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you very much. Years ago, we did have a city marina where we could launch boats and have slips to put our boats in. And I guess there was a huge kerfuffle because there was a cleanup that had to be done because of the dump that existed there. And I was just wondering, how's that coming along? Are we making any progress? Is there any money in the budget to rebuild that marina?
Thank you for your question, Phil. I'm going to direct your question to Director of Operations, Mike Saunier.
Good evening, Phil. Essentially, we took the issue under task a couple of years ago. We actually surveyed the marina part to see how much dredging we would have to perform there. And unfortunately, the cost was prohibitive at the time. It's something that is on our radar that we're always looking at to see if we could ever, further enhance the area. Unfortunately, right now, it is cost prohibitive to move forward. Thank you.
Phil, thank you again for that question. A reminder to everyone listening in that if you'd like to ask a question yourself on the open house this evening, press 3 on your phone's keypad. Now, Stephanie, we have another question coming from Connect Oshawa. Some of these questions were submitted by community members on Connect Oshawa, and so this one is from user Sarah, who is wondering how much money was given to the Oshawa This Week in 2020, 2021, and 2022.
Thank you, Sarah. The city page in the Oshawa This Week, which includes legislated and mandatory ads as well as other branch ads. The cost of some of these ads are covered by the city. For instance, a portion of the development-related ads placed by planning services are charged back to the respective developer, and ads related to property tax sales are recovered. The average annual cost over the 3-year period was approximately $89,000, and the city recovered approximately half of those expenses.
Sarah, thank you for submitting that question. We're going to go directly to another live question. This one is from Jan. Jan has a question on crosswalks. Jan, welcome. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Just wondering if there's any crosswalks that are on the books for Simcoe Street North, south of the college. The traffic is terrible, and the students jaywalk so bad that I'm afraid somebody's going to end up killed, even if they put in a flashing light sidewalk or crosswalk.
Hi, Jan. It's Commissioner Diskey here. Simcoe Street North is a regional road. We are unaware of any new crosswalks coming, but that's a question that could be directed to the region. Thank you.
Jan, thank you for that question. We're going to go to another live question. Again, press 3 on your phone's keypad if you'd like to ask a live question on the open house this evening. We're looking for questions related to the City of Oshawa's areas of responsibility, including the city budget, comprised of both operating and capital budgets and municipal budget processes, city services and programs such as waste, green bin, and yard waste collection, city roads, maintenance and snow clearing, and parks and recreation, and sidewalk maintenance, and more. We have a question now from Lisa on, I believe it's about the city's debt. Lisa, welcome. Please go ahead.
Good evening. Can you please tell me how much debt the city has?
Thank you for your question, Lisa. The city has a projected debt balance for the end of 2023 at $38.6 million.
Lisa, thank you for that question. Our next question was again submitted on Connect Oshawa from user Sarah. Stephanie, a question for you. They're wondering, how much have we spent each year on private and additional security for the downtown businesses?
Thank you, Eric. Through one of the city's reports, we reported to council that there was $70,700 to be spent in late 2021 and an additional $857,000 to be spent in 2022 for security in the downtown.
Thank you again, Sarah, for submitting that question via Connect Oshawa. Up next, we have a live question. This is from Ross. Ross has a question related to the tax increase. Ross, welcome. Please go ahead.
Hello, and first of all, I got to thank you for cleaning up my end of driveway when the snow plower comes and piles up lots of snow there, as I'm senior citizen and I enrolled to cleaning up, which they did a great job, I don't know, a few weeks ago when we had that snowstorm. So I'm going to thank you for that. And my question is about the city tax 2.62. According to the value of the house, which the lady I think mentioned about 360 whatever thousand. Now I want to know, how does it work with different areas? As we know, the value of the properties in Oshawa has gone up, skyrocket, and how does it work with each individual different places?
Thank you for your question, Ross. The value of $356,000 is a value determined by MPAC. That's the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation. And once they have an assessment cycle, they determine what the average is. We're still using outdated values from 2020. We have not actually had a reassessment for a number of years, so I anticipate that number will go up. But taxes are calculated using that assessed value, and once the city has an established tax rate, that tax rate gets multiplied against the assessed value, and that's how your taxes get determined.
Ross, thank you very much for that question. Up next, we have a question from Merle, which is related to the budget and the region. Merle, welcome. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm wondering if you could tell me how the proposed tax increase for the city of Oshawa compares what is expected to be a tax increase for the region of Durham.
Thank you for your question. The City of Oshawa's tax rate and the regional tax rate are set independently. The City of Oshawa is farther along in their budget process than the region. So until that cycle takes place later in January, we won't be able to determine what the combined effects of the two budgets would be on the municipal tax rate.
Merle, thank you for that question. Now, our next question was submitted in advance on Connect Oshawa from user Manny. It's a question for Stephanie. They are wondering, why doesn't the City of Oshawa allocate budget to improve maintenance on main roads in Oshawa, like Rossland, which has lots of potholes?
Thank you, Manny, for your question. I'm going to ask Ron Dickey, the Commissioner of Community and Operations Services, to answer this question.
Thank you for the question, Manny. The City of Oshawa is only responsible for maintenance on city-owned roads. Other roads in Oshawa are owned and maintained by the region of Durham. These are referred to the regional roads. When out in the community, you can identify a regional road if the road sign also has a number on it. For instance, Rossland Road is Regional Road 28. So all road signs have the number 28 on them for Rossland Road. And also, as Director Saulnier mentioned earlier, our road staff do look at these roads, and those roads will be flagged and reported back to the region by our staff.
Thank you very much, Manny, for that question. Up next, we have a live question from Adam on inflation. Adam, welcome. Please go ahead with your question. Adam, are you there? All right, we'll try and get Adam back in just a moment. I do want to remind people that we are taking your questions. You can press 3 on your phone's keypad if you have a question related to the City of Oshawa's areas of responsibility for the 2023 budget. Up next, we have Steve with a live question related to sidewalks and snow. Steve, welcome. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm physically handicapped, and I got to go down the sidewalk on my scooter. And when in the wintertime, it's very difficult when the sidewalks are not plowed, especially the end of the sidewalks. They don't seem to plow them. I don't understand why. I always get stuck trying to go through there.
Thanks, Steve. I'll pass your question over to Director of Operations, Mike Saulnier.
Good evening, Steve. Essentially, there is dual responsibilities when it comes to sidewalk. There's some sidewalks that are cleaned and cleared by city staff. There's some sidewalks that are cleaned by businesses. There's some sidewalks that are cleaned by residential areas. And I understand what you're telling me about the street corners. They're kind of sometimes neglected, and we actually send out sometimes some hand crews just to clear them to make sure that they're accessible depending on where they are. And there is quite a bit of hand shoving that goes on some of these corners. But like I say, all street are all managed all differently by different avenues. So that's the recap for it.
I understand that Councillor Giberson has some additional information he would like to share.
Thank you for your question, Steve. I'll just add one other point. If you see locations that are not cleared, whether it's whether it's city sidewalk or if it's in a private residence, please call into Service Oshawa, because we do have an enforcement process to try and get compliance from those who are supposed to be clearing the sidewalk.
Steve, thank you very much for that question. Now, for everyone joining us, we're going to do another survey question. You can use your touch-tone phone to indicate your response on this question. We want to hear from you. What portion of your total property tax bill does the city have direct control over? If you would say it's 100%, press 1. If you would say it's 61%, press 2. And if your answer is 41%, press 3. So again, what portion of your total property tax bill does the city have direct control over? If your answer is 100%, press 1. If your answer is 61%, press 2. If your answer is 41%, press 3. We have another community question submitted in advance on Oshawa, Connect Oshawa from user Henry. Henry shared the following. This is a question for Stephanie. The Canadian Automotive Museum Board of Directors has submitted a proposal to reinstate grant funding for the museum. Do you support maintaining the grant cuts, or do you support reinstating funding to at or near the level of other municipalities across Ontario?
Thank you for your question, Henry. The city has received correspondence from the Canadian Automotive Museum requesting some additional funding. The decision to fund the grant and the amount is at the discretion of City Council, and as a result, the request made by the Board of Directors will be considered by Council during the budget deliberation meeting.
Henry, thank you for submitting that question via Connect Oshawa. Up next, we have a live question from Roseanne. Roseanne's question is related to electric charging stations in the downtown core. Roseanne, welcome. Please go ahead.
Yes, good evening. I'm not very educated on the electric charging stations, but I do know that they have been placed in the downtown core and that Oshawa intends on placing a few more. You did make the comment that you guys were lacking in revenue from parking this year because of lack of vehicles, but you're taking away parking spots, and I don't know if you collect revenue from the charge if they are paying or if it's a free charge, but I notice people are using them as free parking spots as well. So just wondering how you're collecting money, maintaining these machines if there's not a charge to it.
Thank you, Roseanne. I'm going to pass your question over to the Director of Facilities Maintenance, Mr. Kevin Alexander.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for your question. So unless the user is actually plugged into the charging station itself, they could be subject to a ticket on the on-street parking locations. I hope that answers your question.
Roseanne, thank you for that question. Up next, we have another live question, and this is a question from James, who is a question about tax increases. Hi, James. You're joining us live on the line. Please go ahead with your question.
Yes, there's two parts to it. I understand somebody said something about $53 increase. Is that a month or is that a year for each taxpayer?
Thank you, James, for your question. The amount of 2.62% or $53.41 would be the annual increase to a person's tax bill who had a home assessed at $356,000.
James, thank you for that question. Up next, before we get to our next question, Stephanie, we've spoken a lot tonight about the provincial government's Bill 23. Has there been other direction from the province in the last few years?
Yes, Eric. In 2019, the city was directed by the Ontario Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing to participate in a service delivery and administrative expenditure review with the goal of finding service efficiencies and budget reduction opportunities targeting a 4% reduction in operationals. MNP, a leading Canadian accounting, tax, and business consulting firm, was hired by the city to identify initiatives to obtain the reduction without impacting frontline services. MNP found that the city's financial controls and framework were sound and adhered to best practices. The efforts put forth to maintain cost controls were evident by the limited number of opportunities identified by MNP that would have a substantial impact on the city's bottom line. Overall, the City of Oshawa has been able to maintain costs at approximately the level of inflation over the last 5 years. Thank you.
Up next, we have a live question from Suzette, whose question is related to traffic and construction. Suzette, welcome. Please go ahead.
Yes, good evening. My issue is I moved into Oshawa in 2015, in North Oshawa. The housing, building of homes, construction is just everywhere. But the infrastructure cannot support all these people, especially people that are going to be driving cars. Ritson Road is bumper to bumper at certain times of the day. It's difficult to even make a left-hand turn on Collin and Ritson because of the traffic. It takes me about 3 lights to get through. Now, I some of the questions that prior to this one had to do with infrastructure and that, and Bill 23. Now, am I to understand that the government of Ontario has asked Oshawa and other cities to build homes for, I guess, more people need homes, but the homes in North Oshawa, they're going for $1.2 million. Who's going to be affording that homes for people that need homes, really? Can anybody give me an answer?
Thank you for your question. I'm going to pass your question to the Director of Planning, Mr. Tom.
Thank you for your question, Suzette. It's certainly a valid one, and it's one we've asked ourselves. Bill 23 is a bill which, on its surface, doesn't actually deal a lot with the issue of affordability, which you've raised. Certainly there's a mandate by the province to supply or encourage the development industry to supply 1.5 million homes over the next 10 years. But as to what the cost of those homes will be is a question that every municipality in the province is asking. There's a lot more still to come. We hope that the province will provide further details through various regulations, perhaps, but those are pieces of information that we have yet to receive.
Suzette, thank you for your question. Up next, we have a question from Robin, whose question is related to street lighting in the downtown core. Robin, please go ahead.
Good afternoon. It's to do with the downtown core. As I said, I was recently there at GM Center, and we had to go through the side streets to get to Simcoe because we were going to be eating. Anyway, it was really dark on the side streets. There was no lighting. And the parking area that we were in was very dark. The instructions for how to pay for parking was very bad. Nobody, and I don't think anybody paid for parking because they couldn't figure out where to pay. It said to pay for parking, but there was no instructions on where to pay. The lighting, though, is what was getting me. I was with other people, so that was it. But you're also talking about how you had X number of dollars put away for security in downtown area. And it's like, where was the security? How are you doing security when you couldn't see anybody? Or are they cameras? That's a lot of money for cameras.
Thank you, Robin, for your question. I'm going to pass it over to Director of Operations, Mike Saulnier.
Yes, good evening. Essentially, we undertake a study of the different roads in the area that are, I'm going to say, not meeting the standard as far as lighting. So I don't know what street in particular you're talking about. We actually go out in the evening and do some readings in respect to how bright the street is lit, and I think when we put in the LED lights in the city of Oshawa, we actually enhance the illumination throughout the city. So we do take those matters very seriously, and if it's just a side street that, depending on how many people are in, you're right, you could be limited to one light, for example. So that's a scenario that we follow.
Thank you, Mike, for that question. I understand that Mayor Carter would like to add some additional information on this topic.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, and thank you for the question. You might have just recently seen that we have also added lights in the downtown. That was part of a decorative program, but it also goes to enhancing the illumination in the downtown for security purposes. You also had asked in regards to security and the investments we're making there. It's not just about the foot patrols that are ongoing, but we also have an active CCTV program to be able to monitor many of our city facilities and also city areas to be able to make sure that our security teams can be dispatched appropriately. But we're always looking at areas where we can enhance lighting, and I know that we'll take that under consideration. In regards to utilizing our pay machines, I greatly appreciate the feedback, and I know that it's something that we can take under consideration as we really want to make sure that we're a customer-friendly community. So thank you for the question.
Robin, thank you very much for that question. Now, Stephanie, just before, I was wondering if you could maybe tell our listeners at what point the city would look to hire a consultant.
Sure, Eric. The city hires qualified staff, but at times certain projects require a specialist. A consultant may be engaged to provide detailed design drawings and specifications and complete specialized assessments such as structural analysis. Due to varying project specifics and frequency, retaining in-house expertise would not be cost-effective or sustainable.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Now, we're actually just about reaching the end of our open house this evening. We had a lot of great questions this evening. With the last couple of minutes remaining, are there some closing remarks you would like to share with the listeners, Mayor Carter?
Well, Eric, first of all, thank you very much for being our moderator this evening. You did a tremendous job working us through the many calls. Thank you to the callers and also those that participated through Connect Oshawa. On behalf of the City of Oshawa, our council, and of course, Councillor Giberson, the Chair of Corporate and Finance Services, I just want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for participating. It's been an exciting opportunity to talk to you, and we've heard some great questions this evening. I just want to remind everybody, don't forget that you're able to watch the remaining budget meetings online via web stream or in person in the council chambers beginning at 9:30, starting this Friday, and that is January the 13th. We'll continue deliberations of our budget on Thursday, January the 19th, and also deliberations on January the 20th, starting at 9:30 in the morning. If need be, we will also have a budget meeting that will happen on the 27th day of January, starting at 9:30 in the council chamber. A recording of tonight's call will be made available in the coming days at oshawa.ca/budget. Again, I just want to thank everyone for participating and thank our senior leadership team, our directors, our managers, and our staff here at the great city of Oshawa. Eric, thank you once again.
Thank you, Mayor Carter, and thank you to all of our panelists for joining us on the open house this evening. For everyone listening, don't forget to stay up to date on the 2023 city budget process, access the web stream, or review the meeting schedule. Visit oshawa.ca/budget. Thank you again to everyone for joining us this evening, and have a great night. Visit oshawa.ca/budget. Thank you again to everyone for joining us this evening, and have a great night. Visit oshawa.ca/budget. Thank you again to everyone for joining us this evening, and have a great night. Visit oshawa.ca/budget. Thank you again to everyone for joining us this evening, and have a great night. Visit oshawa.ca/budget. Thank you again to everyone for joining us this evening, and have a great night. Visit oshawa.ca/budget. Thank you again to everyone for joining us this evening, and have a great night. Visit oshawa.ca/budget. Thank you again to everyone for joining us this evening, and have a great night. Visit oshawa.ca/budget. Thank you again to everyone for joining us this evening, and have a great night. Visit oshawa.ca/budget. Thank you again to everyone for joining